I have heard it said that faith can move mountains. Personally, I've never seen what faith can do to a mountain, but I have seen what it can do to people. That's what our story is about tonight. It's a tale known as The Game of the Gods.
Ivan Zaroff sighed as he stared down at the deer. It laid at his feet, twitching as blood oozed from the gunshot wound. It was clearly fine sport, and there would be plenty of resources from its body, yet he still felt unfulfilled. It wasn't right. It felt so empty without his father and brother, but feeling sad wouldn't bring them back, so he drove the hook into the beast's neck and started dragging it back to his home. He couldn't count how many times they, as a family, did this. The setup of altar, the cuts to properly harvest everything from the kill, the prayers, the exaltations. He wasn't worried about doing anything wrong. It just didn't feel right on his own. Mama had died many years ago, and now Papa and brother were gone. They haven't even been dead a whole year. They had gone to hunt a special game. They had heard stories of a self-proclaimed warlock who lived in a small town somewhere in the Black Forest of Germany. Sadly, the only thing that returned was a package with bloody clothes and a drawing of the Black Sun icon. Ivan spent many nights looking at that icon, hating it, hating who sent it, and why he sent it. He had made this personal. Every year, the family would honor what Papa called the Evermother, hunting the best game they could find. It wasn't personal. After all, this so-called warlock was the one claiming to be so powerful. Did he really think he wouldn't become the object of attention for predators? Then he is so affronted as to insult his family by sending their bloody clothes back with his strange god's calling card. Ivan couldn't stand it, but he couldn't just go and kill this man in broad daylight. He wasn't sure a direct fight would even favor him. No, this would need to be his great work. More than a murder. This would need to be a hunt, in every sense of the word. So, he carried out the rituals, uttered the dread words, whispered his promises and love unto the cold earth for the dead but growing god. And still, nothing happened. He knew the stories, the legends, the myths of her favored children, the monstrous Genali, more than man, but less than beast. But he felt no change, no blessing. He looked upon the bloody altar of bones and antlers, tattered skin and dry blood. It just seemed like it wasn't enough. Like he wasn't enough. No, Mother Aya would not abandon him, his family. There must have been something he was missing. Some clue, direction, anything. He read and reread every book, every scroll. What was he missing? Until finally he had a thought. Was he making it harder than it needed to be? Of course. He was too emotional, too close to the situation to really see it clearly. What made these monsters more than a man anyway? Their claws and fangs? Well, he could make those. He could probably make even better versions. He glared at the old tool shed, full of sharp metal, and smiled. He knew exactly what to do. He cackled and grinned in the shed as he pounded bear traps, railroad spikes, heating them until they were glowing hot. He could only mold and bend them so much, but it would be enough. It was finally time for his true test. He screamed as sharp, burning metal met raw flesh, on his arms, his legs, and finally, around his face. The bright full moon was the only witness to his convictions, as he emerged from the shed trembling in pain, like a newborn from the womb. He draped himself in coats and hoods. His new form would be enough to face the warlock, but he needed some element of surprise. Ready as he would ever be, he walked into the woods. He trekked for days, maybe weeks, slowly making his way to the town of Urbai. Sleeping under the stars and branches, for the first time since Papa and brother died. He felt almost happy. He was doing something maybe they would be proud of him for. His new form was a blessing, to be sure, but it meant he couldn't make direct contact with people. He watched from tree lines of the village. For days he lurked and skulked around, keeping out of sight, watching for any sign of his target. He was sure he'd know him when he saw them. Rezothians, much like their god, didn't care for subtlety. It was evening of the 4th day when he finally saw the man, draped in a black cloak, walking with a cane that he didn't need. Ivan stalked him till the man entered an old-looking house. He couldn't help but smile. Such an old place couldn't have good defenses, though it was clear the property had been soaked in the influences of the unformed king. Skigen blooms littered the yard, a warped corruption of the beautiful life that flourished from the Evermother's love. Highly toxic, even the briefest of contact could cause mutations. Rezothians would seek the plant out to harvest it, to try and become more like their prince. The target, however, was not only dangerous, but smart. He had so much of the strange plant growing in his yard, and he knew better than to touch it directly. He watched the home for several hours. No lights ever turned on inside, and his target never came back out. So where was he? Surely he couldn't be wandering around his own home in the dark. Maybe he was asleep. It was reckless, but after spending so much time preparing, and just getting to this point, Ivan was sick of being cautious. He looked around, making sure that no one was in the area, and then he darted for the front door. It wasn't locked. Ivan cursed under his breath and tensed up, bracing for whatever trap he had just set off. But nothing happened. He was shocked. Was this man so comfortable that he didn't even bother to guard his home? No alarms, no wire trap, no darts, arrows, or explosives? The arrogance of this man was staggering. It was dark inside, but his eyes had long ago adjusted to darkness. Dust covered everything. No, not everything. There was a trail. A single path the target had used to get through the house. He followed it to a door that could only lead to a basement. That was why there were no lights on. He didn't live in the house itself. He stayed down in the basement. He wanted to throw the door open and pounce through it, screaming death and hate, to rip the bastard apart. No, it couldn't be just that simple. This wasn't a murder. It was a hunt. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a damp rag. Crude, but it would work. And if it didn't, there would always be time for violence. And so, Ivan slowly opened the door. Ulrich woke with a start and a splitting headache. He rubbed his head. A foul smell clung to his face. He wasn't in his bed, or even his home. He laughed to himself. This must be a dream. Of course, another delightful vision of unreason from his pleased god. He laughed again and stood up, fighting off the dizzy spell. He appeared to be in a forest. In fact, he recognized it. This was the Black Forest. How oddly mundane for his master. Too mundane. Everything was wrong. There was no screaming or laughing clouds. The trees were made of wood. This couldn't be a dream. He turned quickly, trying to understand his situation. That was when he saw a letter pinned to a tree with a knife. He pulled it free and read it. It had no words, but he understood it. Scratched onto the paper was a sign he had seen before. The carrion bloom, a symbol of the children of Aya. He looked at the knife and then nodded to himself. He looked around and yelled into the forest, asking what were the rules of engagement for this silly little game. A man stepped out from behind a tree. He was certainly a sight to behold. Dirty work clothes with sharp pieces of metal somehow bound to his hands and feet, with a face made of metal shaped with oddly triangular teeth. Ulrich couldn't resist asking if Mother Aya loved cosplay, but Ivan just growled. This wasn't about gods, not anymore. This was about family. Ulrich just shrugged and confessed he sacrificed his family ages ago. Ivan explained that Ulrich had to survive till sunrise. He would have 3 minutes to get his bearings and create distance. Then the hunt would start. If Ulrich made it out of the forest and could get back to his house, Ivan would admit defeat. However, after those 3 minutes were up, Ivan would use every trick, every skill, every weapon to find and kill him. Ulrich nodded. It actually sounded like a charming little game. Ivan backed away and quickly vanished into the trees, while Ulrich looked up into the clear night sky. He measured the point of the North Star and realized it could only be around 10 p.m. Assuming that this challenger could actually kill him, sunrise was much too long to wait, which meant that he would have to use the alternative wind condition and get back to his house. Once again he looked to the sky. Tracing lines from the North Star, he'd be able to tell which direction was north. But that gave way to a new problem. He wasn't sure which direction his house was in. He tried to picture a map of the area in his mind. The forest thinned out to the south and east of the village, which meant he must have been taken either north or west of the village. It then occurred to him, he didn't need to actually find his house per se. He just needed to find the town. Once he was back in the streets, he could easily get to his house from any point. Ulrich suddenly felt eyes upon him. He turned and saw Ivan standing a few yards away. Ulrich nodded to him and asked if 3 minutes was really up already. Ivan nodded and swung out with his metal-covered fists. Ulrich ducked and jabbed the knife forward. It clanked loudly and harmlessly against a layer of metal underneath Ivan's shirt. Ulrich could only groan and look up into Ivan's eyes. He always hated asymmetrical games. Ivan lashed out, kicking Ulrich in the chest, and knocked the old man against a tree. Ulrich couldn't help but ask if this was all a bit too anticlimactic, but Ivan just snarled and swung on him again. Again, Ulrich ducked off to the side, and the sharp metal dug deep into the tree. Even Ulrich himself had to wince at that. It sounded very painful, and was an unlucky strike for the young hunter. Ivan roared in pain as he tried to pull his hand back. The metal stayed in the tree, keeping some of his skin and flesh with it. Ivan staggered back, clutching his wounded hand, and hissed a dire warning. His home was still far away, and the sun was even farther, but his hand would be patched up in no time. With that, Ivan turned and fled back into the trees. Ulrich had won the first round of this little game, but he knew the lunatic would bandage his hand up and return very quickly. He also knew he had to be north or west of the village, so he once again checked the North Star and started heading southeast, moving at a quickened pace, not fully running, but certainly not walking either. He needed to strike a balance of making good time but also conserving his energy. The last thing he needed was to be 10 yards in town, out of breath, with his new playmate right behind him. He wondered who this boy was. He mentioned family, but Ulrich couldn't recognize him. He allowed his mind to wander, trying to remember any clue to the pursuer's identity, when he felt and heard the all-too-close sound of cracking glass. He screamed and quickly covered his mouth. Looking down, he saw broken glass, scattered amongst the leaves that had fallen. He backed up and leaned against a tree, trying to swipe the glass out of the bare skin on his feet. Damn lunatic. How long was Ulrich drugged? Had the hunter laid this glass out beforehand? Ulrich took a breath. His feet were throbbing in pain and oozing blood. It hurt, but this couldn't kill someone. No, this was a trap meant to make him give his general direction away. He couldn't have covered the whole forest in glass, but any step could be painful. He looked around. Surely the hunter had heard him yell when he first stepped onto the glass, which meant it was time to move along. He found a low branch on a tree and snapped it off. It wasn't the best tool for the job, but it had to do. He swept the branch left and right, back and forth, brushing most of the glass aside as he slowly kept moving forward. Each step made him want to scream, but he promised himself the pain would ease, eventually. Ivan peeked around a tree. Seeing no one, he darted forward, his heavy boots crunching bits of broken glass beneath him. So, the old bastard had found one of his glass traps. He knew he heard him yell. It's a shame he was able to keep from screaming more. Still, this meant that Ivan was on the right track. He could detect the very scent of blood. He was closing in, and this time, he wasn't going to fumble. Ulrich yawned as he dragged the branch across the ground in front of him. He hadn't found any more glass in a while, but he was sure the hunter would have more traps out here. He looked up to the sky again, trying to measure the distance between stars. He'd been walking for, most likely, almost 2 hours. His headache had finally stopped, but he felt tired, and his feet were still in pain. He wanted his bed. He wanted to stand up straight. He wanted to not have to keep sweeping the forest floor. But he knew the moment he gave in to those wants, the hunter would be right there to punish his poor sportsmanship. Meanwhile, Ivan tried to slow his breathing. He was close. He knew he was. He looked at his watch. It was just after midnight. He had plenty of time. But his hand was still throbbing under the heavy bandages. He wished Papa and brother were there. They were always so much better at patch jobs than him. He wished he could just get this over with, that he was back in his home having a second helping of stew, reading his books by the fireplace. He clenched his bloody fist, sending a new wave of pain through his body. No rest, no comfort, until the hunt was finished. Neither his family nor the Evermother would ever afford him to go lax. He growled a threat to focus himself and keep going. Ulrich finally could see the glow of streetlights. It was reckless, maybe even foolish, but he dropped the branch and stood up and ran. His steps were noisy and painful, but he had to get into town. As soon as he saw a street sign, he'd be able to find his way home in minutes. Besides, while the hunter was ready for hunting in the forest, it was highly unlikely he had prepared for an urban environment. Ivan cursed seeing the glow of the nearby lights. Hunting in the town would favor the target, and his bandages were already soaked thoroughly with his own blood. Still, he wasn't out of tricks yet. He heard heavy footsteps and noticed movement far ahead. He leaned against a tree and braced himself, pulling out his handgun from one of his mini coat pockets. He aimed and fired. Ulrich heard the shot and fell behind another tree. A gun? Really? A gun? He brought a gun! He couldn't help but laugh and yell into the forest, asking the hunter just how desperate he really was. There was no way the shot was unheard in the village. Ulrich was honestly having a good laugh at it, until he realized the sound of heavy steps coming towards him. He cursed, realizing that he had fallen for another trap. The gun was never meant to hit him. It was to goad his reaction and get him to stop running. He had no choice left in the matter. He gritted his teeth and ran like hell through the village. He recognized the houses and the small buildings. Ivan aimed his gun, so tempted to fire another shot, but he didn't want to draw too many people awake. Besides, he couldn't use the gun with his dominant hand, and truth be told, he didn't want to embarrass himself further with another shot that missed so wildly. So he just started to jog after the target. He wasn't worried yet, though. He still had plenty of time and resources. Ulrich already knew where he was. He couldn't be more than a block or two away from his home. He didn't have time to celebrate, though. Glancing over his shoulder, he saw the hunter, his hand covered in a bloody bandage. Ulrich nodded to him and started to pick up his pace. Ivan, meanwhile, had to take a breath and focus. He knew the layout of the town, though clearly not as thoroughly as the target did. He could still navigate his way down the street. It was just a matter of keeping his focus. He ran closer to the buildings, tucking into shadows, trying to be unnoticeable, even with his current form. The game was nearing its end, and in a way, he was glad that it had gotten this far. Sure, he could have just shot the target back at the beginning, or when he was drugged, but that would have been no challenge. This is how it should be. This is how it needed to be. Ulrich was starting to breathe heavily. When finally his house came into view, everything was sore. He was more tired than he had ever felt in his life. His feet and his head were throbbing, but there it was. Literally home base. He froze, seeing the hunter standing on the far side of his lawn. Ulrich was impressed. Cutting through toxic flowers to get at him was a very bold choice for clearly such a young hunter. After all the walking, the traps, the injuries, the insults, it was all down to a blunt race. Ulrich darted forward, heading for his front door while Ivan charged for him. Ivan was all but on top of Ulrich, raising his fist high, entwined with jagged metal. All Ulrich could do was lunge forward, throwing his shoulder into the door. And suddenly, everything became green. As the door was knocked open, a cloud of thick green dust burst from the doorframe. Ivan and Ulrich both fell to the ground coughing, a strange copper taste flooding their mouths. Mortal enemies, now laid on the ground trying to breathe. Ivan asked through wheezing gasps, when did Ulrich trap his door? But Ulrich could only spit, clutching at his chest, saying he didn't. They stared at each other. The world was spinning. Ivan felt as though he was going to throw up, while Ulrich was praying that he could keep from soiling himself. Finally, Ulrich was able to utter words that needed to be asked. He asked Ivan, why? Why hunt him down? Why set these traps? Why risk his own life for some random kill? Ivan wanted to punch him so hard, but at the time he was seeing 3 Ulrichs and didn't know which one was real. As he coughed and spat blood, he accused Ulrich of killing his papa and brother, then sending their bloody clothes back to him just to mock him. Ulrich broke out into a cold sweat. He'd never been hunted before, and he surely wasn't going to be so disrespectful as to mail bloody clothes back to a son. Ivan couldn't believe what he was hearing. The target had to be lying. If it wasn't him, then who? They stared at each other, and then back at the door, as a man, lean and tall, stood there, with a gas mask on. He stepped into the room and looked around, pulling the mask back. Neither Ivan nor Ulrich recognized him. He was young and unremarkable, aside from bulging, sore eyes bugging out of his skull, perfectly rounded in shape. He put his phone to his ear.
Sir, you're not going to believe this. I got them both, with the malachite powder. I know, right? I told you it wasn't just a dumb rock. No, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. You sure she'll accept? I mean, he's already one of hers. That is a good point, sir. Your will be done.
The man hung up his phone and slipped it into his back pocket, then grabbed Ivan and heaved the hunter up onto his shoulder. The bug-eyed man glanced down at Ulrich, then turned and walked away, closing the door behind him. Ulrich coughed up some more blood, and then slumped limp on the floor of his house. In the year 2020, Ulrich Berman was found dead inside his home, having suffered an apparent respiratory episode. Feared and disliked by his neighbors as being some manner of witch or warlock, the matter was not investigated deeper. Having no relatives, his property was put up for donation to anyone who would be willing to take his occult collection. Ivan Zarov was never found. However, also in 2020, human remains were found within the German Black Forest, roughly a mile outside the town of Irbai. The remains offered no ID except for a folded piece of paper that had the letter S drawn on it.
Poor guys. Personally, I think they ran a perfectly good game. It's just a shame that they didn't realize their opponent was S tier. In any case, I'll see you when we come back for our next tale. But until then, donec itorum conveniens.
Eyes